When a man truly loves someone, it can stir up an intense mix of emotions, one of which is fear. While love is celebrated as an uplifting and empowering force, it can also reveal deep-seated vulnerabilities. For a man, falling in love often comes with a fear of not being enough, fear of inadequacy, failure, or even the potential loss of the relationship. These fears are not always articulated, nor are they easy to confront, which is why they can manifest in behaviors that seem contradictory to the love he feels. Love exposes the rawest parts of us. It strips away facades and demands authenticity. This level of emotional exposure can feel overwhelming, especially for a man who has been conditioned to suppress vulnerability. He may pull away not because he doesn't love you, but because he is grappling with his own internal battles. The pressure to meet expectations, whether real or perceived, can weigh heavily on him. You might think, what if I fail her? What if I can't provide what she needs? These thoughts can lead to withdrawal as he processes his fears in silence. This fear-based reaction isn't unique to one individual. It's deeply rooted in societal norms and human nature. Men, in particular, are often taught from a young age to equate their worth with their ability to protect, provide, and perform. When they love someone deeply, the stakes feel higher. The fear of losing the person they care for the most can become paralyzing, leading to behaviors that seem cold or distant on the surface, but are driven by a desire to preserve the relationship. Ironically, this self-protective mechanism can have the opposite effect, creating distance that can strain the bond. It's important to understand that silence or withdrawal doesn't necessarily equate to a lack of love. For many men, these are coping mechanisms. They retreat not to hurt, but to find clarity, to regain a sense of control over their emotions, or to figure out how to address the fears that love has unearthed. Unfortunately, this retreat can leave their partners feeling confused, hurt, or abandoned. Communication is critical in moments like these, but it must be approached with empathy. It's not about prying or demanding answers. It's about creating a safe space for vulnerability. Reassure him that perfection isn't required, that love thrives on connection, not performance. At the same time, it's important to set boundaries. Loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing your own emotional needs or enduring prolonged neglect. Understanding that love and fear can coexist provides a framework for interpreting behavior that might otherwise feel bewildering. It allows you to see the situation through a lens of compassion rather than frustration. This insight can be transformative not just for your relationship, but for your own emotional growth. By acknowledging the complexity of love, you can navigate its challenges with grace and understanding, creating a deeper and more resilient bond in the process. Society often imposes rigid roles on men, shaping their identities and dictating how they should behave, especially in the realm of relationships. From a young age, men are taught to be providers, protectors, and pillars of strength. Vulnerability is frequently discouraged, seen as a sign of weakness or failure. While these societal expectations may be well-intentioned, aiming to foster responsibility and resilience, they can also create an internal conflict that makes it difficult for men to express emotions, particularly in loving relationships. When a man loves someone deeply, he might feel the weight of these expectations even more acutely. He may believe that his role is to ensure stability, fix problems, and always appear composed. Love, however, has a way of breaking through these facade, challenging the armor he has spent a lifetime building. It asks him to be vulnerable, open, and emotionally present, qualities that may clash with what he has been taught about being a real man. This tension can lead to withdrawal or silence, not because he doesn't care, but because he is unsure how to reconcile his feelings with the societal standards he feels compelled to uphold. The societal narrative that equates masculinity with stoicism and problem-solving leaves little room for emotional nuance. Men may feel they must have all the answers, and when they don't, they risk feeling inadequate. In relationships, this can manifest as hesitation to communicate openly about fears, insecurities, or needs. It's not that they don't want to connect. They simply don't know how to without feeling they're compromising their role as the strong one. Breaking free from these societal expectations requires a shift in perspective, both individually and collectively. Men need to understand that strength is not about suppressing emotions, but embracing them. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's courage. It takes strength to say, I'm struggling, or I don't know what to do. Partners, in turn, can play a pivotal role by creating a safe environment for these conversations, emphasizing that emotional openness is a foundation of trust and intimacy, not a sign of failure. This isn't an easy journey. It requires unlearning deeply ingrained beliefs and challenging societal norms. But it's a necessary one for healthy, fulfilling relationships. When men are given the space to express their true selves without fear of judgment, they can move beyond the limitations of societal expectations. In doing so, they not only strengthen their relationships, but also liberate themselves from the constraints that have held them back from fully experiencing love and connection. When a man who loves you chooses to ignore you, it's often not an act of malice or indifference. Instead, it can stem from a deep-rooted defense mechanism, emotional avoidance. This behavior is frequently misunderstood, leaving the person on the receiving end feeling confused or even rejected. However, understanding the reasons behind it can reveal the complexities of human emotions and relationships. Emotional avoidance often develops as a way to cope with discomfort, conflict, or fear. For men, this tendency can be exacerbated by cultural norms and personal experiences that discourage emotional vulnerability. When love comes into play, it stirs feelings of intimacy, responsibility, and potential loss, all of which can be overwhelming. If a man doesn't have the tools or the confidence to navigate these emotions, he might resort to avoidance as a way to protect himself. Consider a scenario where a man feels inadequate in some aspect of his life, whether it's his career, his ability to meet his partner's expectations, or his own internal struggles. Rather than addressing these issues head-on, he might choose to retreat. Ignoring his partner becomes a way to shield himself from confronting the uncomfortable truths about his own feelings or shortcomings. It's not that he doesn't care, it's that caring so deeply makes him vulnerable, and that vulnerability feels unsafe. Another factor that contributes to emotional avoidance is fear of confrontation or failure. Men may worry that expressing their emotions will lead to conflict, misunderstandings, or even rejection. They might think, if I share how I truly feel, what if it makes things worse? In their mind, silence or distancing seems like the safer option, even if it creates confusion and pain for their partner. It's important to note that emotional avoidance is rarely a conscious choice. It often operates on a subconscious level, shaped by past experiences, personality traits, and learned behaviors. For example, a man who grew up in an environment where emotions were dismissed or punished might internalize the belief that avoiding feelings is the best way to navigate relationships. This belief can persist into adulthood, influencing how he interacts with loved ones, even when it's counterproductive. For the partner experiencing this behavior, it can be deeply frustrating and hurtful. The key to addressing it lies in fostering open communication and understanding. Instead of reacting with anger or blame, approach the situation with empathy. Ask open-ended questions that encourage him to share his thoughts and feelings, and emphasize that you're there to listen without judgment. Creating a safe space for dialogue can help him feel less threatened by vulnerability. At the same time, it's crucial to set boundaries. While understanding his emotional avoidance is important, it doesn't mean tolerating neglect or dismissiveness indefinitely. Encourage him to seek self-awareness and growth, whether through reflection, counseling, or relationship-building tools. Ultimately, breaking the cycle of emotional avoidance requires effort from both partners. It's about building trust, fostering emotional intelligence, and creating a relationship dynamic where vulnerability is met with acceptance rather than fear. Through patience and understanding, this challenge can become an opportunity for deeper connection and mutual growth. Love is a powerful force. It inspires, transforms, and connects people in profound ways. But sometimes, love alone isn't enough to conquer the personal struggles that reside within us. When a man who loves you ignores you, it might not be because his feelings have diminished, but because his internal battles overshadow his ability to show love in the way you deserve. Everyone carries their own set of challenges, whether they're emotional, mental, or situational. For some, these challenges can feel all-consuming, creating barriers that even love cannot immediately break through. A man may be wrestling with self-doubt, unresolved trauma, or external pressures that cloud his ability to be present and communicative in a relationship. In these moments, his actions or lack thereof are less about you and more about his own internal chaos. Picture a man burdened by financial stress, career setbacks, or family responsibilities. He might feel like he's failing in areas of his life that define his sense of self-worth. When these battles rage within him, his instinct might be to withdraw rather than engage. He may believe that distancing himself is a way to protect you from the storm he's facing, or that he must resolve his struggles alone before he can fully commit to the relationship. Men are often conditioned to see themselves as providers, protectors, and problem solvers. When life challenges their ability to fulfill these roles, it can create an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. He might think, how can I give her the love and stability she deserves when I can't even fix my own problems? This mindset can lead to emotional withdrawal, not because he doesn't care, but because he feels incapable of meeting the expectations he set for himself. In other cases, a man's internal battles might stem from deeper issues like unresolved trauma, depression, or anxiety. These struggles can manifest as emotional unavailability or avoidance, leaving his partner feeling confused and neglected. While love can be a source of comfort and support, it cannot single-handedly heal these wounds. It requires personal effort, self-awareness, and often professional help to address such issues. For a partner, it's important to recognize the difference between being supportive and taking on the role of a fixer. You can't solve his problems for him, nor should you sacrifice your own emotional well-being to accommodate his struggles indefinitely. What you can do is offer understanding, patience, and encouragement while maintaining your own boundary. Remind him that seeking help, whether through counseling, therapy, or trusted relationships, is a sign of strength, not weakness. At the same time, it's crucial to assess the impact of his personal battles on the relationship. While empathy is essential, it's equally important to ensure that his struggles aren't creating a toxic dynamic where your needs and feelings are consistently sidelined. A healthy relationship requires effort and accountability from both partners, even in the face of individual challenges. Love is a powerful foundation, but it thrives when it's paired with self-awareness, communication, and mutual growth. Recognizing that personal battles sometimes overshadow love doesn't diminish its value. It simply highlights the need for compassion, patience, and the willingness to navigate these challenges together. One of the most puzzling aspects of relationships is when a man who claims to love you begins to ignore you, leaving you wondering what went wrong. Often this behavior isn't born out of a lack of affection, but rather a fear of vulnerability. Men, like everyone, have emotional walls, and for many, the idea of opening up those walls, even to someone they deeply care for, can feel overwhelming or even threatening. Fear of vulnerability is deeply ingrained in many people, often stemming from societal expectations, personal experiences, or emotional conditioning. Men in particular are frequently taught to associate vulnerability with weakness, creating an internal conflict when emotions demand to be expressed. When faced with moments that require openness or emotional exposure, withdrawing can feel safer than confronting these deeply held fears. Imagine a man who has spent his life striving to maintain an image of strength and composure. Love introduces a new dynamic, one that asks him to be seen in his entirety, his strengths, flaws, fears, and insecurities. While this level of emotional intimacy is essential for a thriving relationship, it can be intimidating for someone who's unaccustomed to letting their guard down. Rather than risk feeling exposed or judged, he might retreat, leaving you questioning his commitment or affection. This fear of vulnerability can also arise when a man feels he might disappoint or hurt his partner. You might think, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I can't meet her expectations? What if my honesty leads to conflict? These doubts create a mental barrier that makes communication feel risky and burdensome. Ignoring the relationship becomes, in his mind, a way to avoid mistakes, even though it often causes more harm than good. Past experiences also play a significant role in shaping one's comfort with vulnerability. A man who has been betrayed, rejected, or misunderstood in previous relationships may carry those scars into his current one. He might fear that being open will lead to similar pain, even if you've done nothing to warrant the belief. This emotional baggage can create a self-protective reflex to avoid conversations or situations that require emotional depth. As his partner, it's natural to feel hurt or frustrated by this behavior. However, addressing it effectively requires understanding and patience. Start by creating an environment that feels emotionally safe. Avoid criticism or judgment when he does open up, no matter how small the step. Celebrate his willingness to share and reassure him that vulnerability isn't a weakness, but a bridge to deeper connection. At the same time, it's essential to set boundaries. While understanding his fear is important, it doesn't mean you should accept prolonged emotional distance or neglect. Encourage him to explore his fears and insecurities, whether through self-reflection, therapy, or open dialogue with you. Let him know that you're willing to support him, but the growth and effort must come from within him. Relationships thrive on communication and emotional intimacy, but they require mutual effort to overcome barriers. By recognizing and addressing the fear of vulnerability, both partners can work toward building a stronger, more open, and more fulfilling connection.